Ever think about how much we rely on technology these days? I mean,
Yeah,
everything
everything.
from like work to just our daily lives.
Absolutely.
And what happens when it goes wrong? Like your email stops working,
Oh, yeah.
your presentation disappears, the internet's down.
Right.
That's where these like silent heroes come with IT support specialists.
Yeah,
They're the ones who kind of swoop in and save the day, often behind the scenes,
exactly.
dealing with all sorts of tech headaches.
Yeah.
So today we're going to take a deep dive into like what makes them so effective,
Yeah.
these tech problem solvers.
We've got a great resource for this, actually. It's called 30 IT Support Specialist Interview Questions and Answers
Oh, cool.
from a site called Interview Prep.
Okay.
And even if you're not like looking for an IT job or anything, this is a gold mine for
Yeah.
understanding, the skills and the knowledge
Yeah.
that these folks need.
Right.
It's like getting a peek behind the curtain of what keeps our digital world running smoothly.
Yeah, I like that.
Right.
So our mission today
Yeah.
is really simple, is to kind of unpack
Okay.
the core responsibilities,
Hmm.
the must-have skills,
Yeah.
and like the way these IT support specialists approach problems.
Right.
And we're going to do this all based on these typical interview questions
Okay.
and the answers that the experts provide.
That's awesome.
It's like your shortcut to understanding this vital rule.
Right.
Okay, so let's just jump right in.
Let's do it.
The first thing this resource looks at is like operating system expertise.
Okay.
And they start by asking about experience with Windows, Mac OS, and Linux.
Yeah, what's key here is really just that expectation for versatility. I mean,
Oh, okay.
it's rare these days for an organization to only use like one type of system.
Right.
I mean, users are on everything from Windows laptops to MacBooks and even sometimes Linux-based systems,
Yeah.
especially, in server environments.
Okay.
So IT support specialists, they need to be able to kind of speak all those languages.
They need to be multilingual
Exactly.
in computer.
In computer languages.
Yeah. That's cool. So the example answer they give mentions being comfortable with like troubleshooting, updating, and configuring a bunch of different Windows versions,
Uh-huh.
like 7, 8, and 10.
Right.
Then it moves to Mac OS, and it covers everything from software installs to network issues to even like hardware quirks.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
They also mention experience with Linux,
Mhm.
particularly in server environments, dealing with like web servers,
Yeah.
file permissions, and maintenance.
Makes sense.
So that's a pretty broad skill set
Yeah, it is.
that they're looking for.
Yeah, and I think the takeaway for anyone listening is that modern IT support, it's not just about being a master of one system.
Right.
It's about being a versatile problem solver across a whole bunch of different tech landscapes.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on.
Yeah.
The second question digs into like the network security role of an IT support specialist.
Okay.
And you might think, that's just for like a dedicated security team.
Right.
But this resource says that IT support has a really important proactive role to play.
Absolutely. I think this brings up a crucial point about how cybersecurity is really a team effort.
Oh, okay.
It's not just the responsibility of the security specialists.
Right.
Everyone who touches the network, in any way has responsibility to keep things secure.
Okay.
And what's interesting here is that they have this dual focus on, putting preventative measures in place,
Yeah.
but also on educating the people who actually use these systems every day.
Okay, so it's like both the technical side and the human side.
Exactly.
Okay, so the example answer they give, it talks about installing and configuring things like firewalls, antivirus software,
Right.
even intrusion detection systems.
Right.
But it goes beyond that technical setup.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It emphasizes how important it is to stay up to date on the latest security threats.
Right.
And it also mentions like educating users about things like phishing scams,
Right.
strong passwords, safe browsing habits.
Yeah.
It's not just about the defenses. It's about making sure that users aren't like accidentally opening the door to trouble.
Right. It's like, you can have the most secure system in the world, but if someone clicks on a malicious link, it all goes out the window.
It's like leaving your front door wide open,
Exactly.
even though you have a really strong lock on it.
Yep. So user education is all about closing those open windows and really building a security conscious culture within an organization.
Okay, I like that.
I-
All right, so the third question.
Yep.
This one tackles a situation that I'm sure is really common for IT support specialists.
Uh-huh.
How to prioritize multiple support requests
Oh, yeah.
that come in all at the same time.
Yeah, it can get crazy.
I bet, especially
Really?
in a busy IT environment.
Absolutely. Things can get chaotic really fast.
I can imagine. So this resource emphasizes that the key is to focus on like the impact of the issue
Right.
and to keep those lines of communication open.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's fascinating about this is that it's not just about the technical expertise.
Right.
It's also about understanding the needs of the business
Yeah.
and having really good people skills.
Oh, okay.
So you need to quickly assess which problems are causing the most disruption.
Right.
And then you need to manage expectations with everyone who submitted a request.
So you got to be a good communicator too.
Exactly.
So the example answer, it gives this logical approach.
Yeah.
Immediately tackle the critical issues,
Right.
the things that are stopping people from working or creating security risks.
Yeah, those are the top priority.
Right. And for the less urgent stuff, it's about looking at how many users are affected.
Right.
Are there any deadlines looming? Do other tasks depend on this issue being solved?
Makes sense.
And they specifically mention communication.
Yeah,
They say you need to clearly tell users when they can expect a resolution.
absolutely. That transparency can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
I mean, even if a problem takes a long time to fix, if you keep the user informed,
Uh-huh.
it shows them that you're working on it,
Right.
that their issue is important.
Okay.
That can really go a long way in terms of their overall experience with IT support.
I bet. Okay. So the next question.
Yeah.
Question 4. This one dives into troubleshooting those complex hardware issues.
Okay.
This is where the IT detective work comes in.
Absolutely.
This resource stresses the importance of having like a systematic approach.
Right. Every hardware problem is different,
Yeah.
but having a structured way to approach them can really save you a lot of time.
Right.
And it prevents you from going down all these rabbit holes.
Yeah.
It's about being logical and being persistent in your investigation.
So they give an example answer about dealing with a system that kept crashing with those dreaded blue screens,
Oh, yeah.
and they walk through their process.
Okay.
So first, gathering as much information as possible from the user
Yeah.
about, when and how those crashes were happening.
Makes sense.
Then they talked about using the Windows Event Viewer
Right.
to look for clues in those system logs.
Yeah.
And then after that, they ran a bunch of diagnostic tests
Okay.
on the computer's memory and the hard drive. But the aha moment came when they actually physically inspected the motherboard,
Okay.
and they found these swollen capacitors,
Oh, yeah.
which are apparently a common cause of this type of failure.
They are.
Now, for those of us listening who are not tech wizards,
Right.
can you explain what a capacitor is?
Yeah. So capacitors, they're these tiny little electronic components
Okay.
that basically store energy.
Okay.
And when they fail, they can cause all sorts of unpredictable problems
Right.
with your hardware.
So this methodical approach really helped them pinpoint that one faulty component.
Exactly.
Without that, they might have just guessed.
Right. Or replaced parts unnecessarily.
Yeah, which is time-consuming and expensive.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so question 5.
Yeah.
This one kind of switches gears to the modern way of working
Okay.
and asks about setting up a VPN.
Okay.
That's a virtual private network
Uh-huh.
for employees who are working remotely,
Right.
which is obviously crucial these days.
Absolutely. It's all about secure access.
Yeah, to those company resources from outside the office.
Right.
So the resource highlights that this involves several key steps.
Yeah, it's not just about making a connection. It's about making a secure connection.
Right.
And it has to be easy enough for employees to actually use.
So you have to balance security with like usability.
Exactly.
Okay, so the example answer they give outlines the entire process, starting with choosing the right VPN solution.
Okay.
Whether it's something the company manages themselves or a third-party service.
Makes sense.
And then it goes into configuring the VPN server itself.
Right.
Setting up things like how users will be authenticated, what kind of encryption they'll use,
Right.
access controls they'll put in place.
Yeah.
They even mentioned setting up firewall rules
Yeah.
to kind of add another layer of security.
Right.
And then finally, it's about creating those client profiles that employees will use, distributing them securely, and providing clear instructions and training
Yeah, it's a whole package.
to make sure that remote access is secure.
Okay. And this raises a really important point, I think, about user experience when it comes to security.
Yeah.
If a security measure is too complex, too hard to use,
Right.
people are just going to try to find ways around it, which
Yeah.
could actually make things less secure.
Exactly. So making that VPN setup and that usage as smooth as possible is really important.
It's part of making it effective.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so question 6.
Okay.
This one deals with something I think we've all experienced.
Yeah.
Slow internet connections.
The worst.
It's the worst.
Yeah.
And this resource, it focuses on the practical troubleshooting steps that an IT support specialist might take to get things back up to speed.
Okay.
What's surprising about slow internet is that it can be caused by so many different things.
Oh, yeah.
Some are technical, some are surprisingly simple.
Absolutely.
So it's often a process of elimination
Yeah, it
to
is.
figure out what's actually going on.
So the example answer, it lists a bunch of common culprits.
Okay.
Everything from like network congestion,
Uh-huh.
which might involve looking at something called quality of service settings,
Right.
to outdated hardware,
Yeah.
like routers, switches, modems, even the cables themselves.
Yep.
They also mention interference from other devices or physical obstructions
Yeah.
that can weaken a Wi-Fi signal.
Right.
So the solutions they suggest, they range from upgrading your internet plan
Yeah.
to replacing old equipment, checking all the physical connections,
Yeah.
repositioning your router, maybe using Wi-Fi extenders,
Yeah.
or a mesh network to improve coverage.
Right.
It's a mix of technical fixes and just practical tips.
It is, and I think we've all been there.
Oh, yeah.
You know, struggling with slow internet.
For sure.
And it's incredibly frustrating.
It is.
Because it can really cripple your productivity.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to have a video call.
Right.
Or download large files when your internet is just crawling.
Ugh, I can't even.
So being able to diagnose and resolve these issues is a really valuable skill
It is.
for IT support.
Okay. So moving on to a bit more of a technical question.
Okay.
The difference between TCP and UDP.
Okay.
These are like fundamental protocols that govern how data travels across the internet.
Right.
And the resource highlights the core differences in terms of reliability and speed.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about the trade-offs between, you know, getting your data there quickly versus making absolutely sure that it arrives correctly.
Right.
Different applications have different needs.
So they give a really clear explanation in the example answer.
Okay.
They describe TCP, which stands for Transmission Control Protocol,
Right.
as connection-oriented and reliable.
Yeah.
They say, think of it like sending a registered letter.
Okay.
The sender gets confirmation that the recipient received it.
Uh-huh.
And if any part of the letter is missing, it gets resent.
Right.
So this makes it perfect for things like file transfers, email, browsing the web, where you need all of the data to arrive intact.
Right.
Now, UBP, on the other hand,
Okay.
that's User Datagram Protocol.
Uh-huh.
It's connectionless, it's faster, but it's less reliable.
Yeah.
Kind of like shouting across a room.
Okay.
You send the information quickly, but you don't necessarily get confirmation that it was all received.
Right.
So this makes UDP better for things like streaming video or audio online gaming voice calls,
Uh-huh.
where a little bit of lost data is usually better than delays.
Makes sense.
I think this raises a really important point about understanding like the underlying mechanisms of how the internet actually works.
Yeah.
I mean, a typical user might not ever think about TCP or UDP,
Right.
but an IT support specialist needs to know how these things function, so
Absolutely.
they can troubleshoot problems effectively.
Right. Like if someone's having choppy video calls,
Right.
that might point to a UDP issue,
Okay.
whereas, you know, a failed file download
Uh,
might suggest a TCP problem.
okay. So they have to know the difference.
Things-
So question 8
Yeah.
shifts our focus back to like the practical tools of the trade.
Okay.
Software used for remote desktop support.
Right.
This is essential for IT professionals
Yeah.
who need to help users who aren't physically in the same location.
Absolutely. And these tools have become so important
Yeah.
in modern IT support, especially with so much remote work happening.
Right.
They let IT see exactly what the user's seeing
Yeah.
and take control of their computer to fix problems directly.
It's like being right there with them.
Exactly.
So the example answer, they mentioned a few popular choices.
Okay.
First, TeamViewer,
Right.
which is good because it works across different operating systems
Mm.
and it has built-in security features.
Yeah.
Then there's AnyDesk, which is known for being fast and having low latency.
Right.
So there's less of a delay
Uh-huh.
when you're controlling that remote computer.
Right.
And finally, they mentioned Microsoft Remote Desktop,
Okay.
which is a feature built into Windows. So there isn't one best tool necessarily.
Right.
It depends on the situation.
Exactly.
But they've all been really helpful, I think.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, remote support has completely changed how IT support teams work.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, they can resolve issues much faster now
Right.
without having to actually travel to the user's location.
Yeah.
It saves a ton of time and resources.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So question 9.
Yeah.
This one goes into mobile device management,
Okay.
or MDM.
Right.
And this is an area that's become really important
Absolutely.
as more and more employees are using smartphones and tablets for work.
Yeah, I mean, mobile devices are so convenient,
Right.
but they also create new security risks.
Oh, okay.
So NDM solutions give IT a way to manage and secure those devices.
So it's like the same kind of security they provide for traditional computers.
Exactly.
Okay. So the example answer, it talks about having experience managing an MDM platform that covered a ton of different devices,
Uh-huh.
like iOS, Android, Windows,
Yeah.
for a lot of users, over 500 in this case.
Yeah.
And their responsibilities included setting up security policies,
Right.
deploying company apps, ensuring overall security, managing device enrollment, distributing apps,
Yeah.
providing remote troubleshooting,
Yeah.
and even offering support and training to the end users.
Wow, that's a lot.
Right. That's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, it is.
This really highlights how the scope of IT support has expanded.
It really has.
It's not just desktops and laptops anymore.
Right.
Mobile devices are now a fundamental part of IT infrastructure
For sure.
for so many organizations.
Yeah.
Okay, so question 10.
Okay.
This one's all about continuous learning,
Right.
how IT support specialists stay current with this ever-changing tech landscape.
It's a fast-moving field.
It is.
Yeah.
And they give some practical strategies for keeping up.
Okay.
And honestly, these are great tips for staying current in any field.
Absolutely. I mean, in the tech world, if you're not learning, you're falling behind.
Right.
It takes constant effort
Right.
to stay knowledgeable.
To stay on top of it.
Exactly.
So the example answer suggests a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
First, subscribing to industry blogs, newsletters, and podcasts.
Yes, that's.
To get regular updates and insights. Then participating in online forums and communities.
Yeah.
To connect with other professionals.
Right.
And learn from their experiences. And finally, attending webinars, workshops, even conferences.
Yeah.
To get more in-depth knowledge
Right.
and see new technologies firsthand.
Yeah.
It's about constantly feeding your brain with new information.
It is. And I think, the rapid pace of technological change is really one of the defining characteristics
That's
of
on
the
it.
IT field.
So you have to keep learning.
Exactly. The people who are committed to lifelong learning and continuous professional development, those are the ones who are going to stay effective and valuable.
In the long run.
Yeah.
Okay, so question 11.
Yeah.
This one highlights the importance of documentation in IT support. Now, this is something that's often overlooked.
It is, but it's so important.
Right.
Yeah.
And the resource emphasizes how good documentation, it helps with consistency and makes it easier to share knowledge within a team.
Right. Good documentation transforms individual knowledge into a team asset.
I like that.
It prevents the situation where only one person knows how to fix a particular problem.
Right.
Which can be a huge bottleneck.
Yeah. So the example answer, it stresses that documentation serves as a reference point for recurring issues so that problems are solved consistently according to established standards.
Right.
They also outline different methods for creating and maintaining that documentation,
Okay.
like taking detailed notes, regularly updating essential knowledge base,
Right.
and encouraging team members to collaborate and share their expertise.
It's about building that collective memory
Yeah.
for the IT team.
Right. So it's not just about one person knowing everything.
Yeah.
It's about making sure that information is accessible
Right.
to everyone on the team.
And it makes the whole process more efficient
Yeah.
when everyone has access to that information.
Okay. So question 12.
Yeah.
This one tackles a challenging but inevitable part of IT support, dealing with difficult users.
Oh, yeah.
This resource focuses on those crucial skills of empathy and clear communication.
Absolutely.
Because you got to remember, when a user is frustrated and having tech problems,
Right.
they're not upset with you personally.
Right. Okay.
They're upset with the technology.
Exactly.
So approaching the situation with empathy can really help.
It can really de-escalate things.
Right. So the example answer they give, they share a story about having to help a frustrated user whose computer kept crashing.
Okay.
And the first thing they did was just acknowledge that frustration.
Yeah.
Empathize with the user.
Yeah.
Then they listened carefully to the user's description of the problem. And they explained everything in clear, non-technical language.
Right.
So the user could understand.
Yeah.
Ultimately, they were able to fix the problem.
Okay.
And the user was really grateful.
That's great.
So that really shows, the power of good communication.
It does.
And empathy.
Absolutely. Your interpersonal skills are just as important as your technical skills.
Right.
And a calm and empathetic approach can make such a difference.
Okay. So question 13
Yeah.
walks us through the classic process of troubleshooting a printer that just won't print.
Okay.
I think we've all been there.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there.
So the resource illustrates this logical flow for tackling this kind of problem.
Okay.
Now, printer issues, they can come from so many different places.
Oh, yeah.
From something as simple as a paper jam
Right.
to more complex driver problems or network connectivity issues.
Absolutely.
So having a structured approach really helps you roll things out.
It does.
One by one.
Yeah.
So the example answer lays out a step-by-step process. First, verify the exact issue with the user. Are there any error messages? What does the print queue look like?
Right.
Then check all the physical connections.
Yeah.
Is it plugged in? Is it connected to the network?
Make sure it's turned on.
Right, exactly.
Basics.
Then they dive into the printer settings on the computer, check the drivers to see if they need updating or reinstalling.
Makes sense.
And then actually physically inspect the printer itself.
Right.
For paper jams, low ink levels, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And throughout the process, they emphasize keeping the user informed.
Absolutely.
About what they're doing and what they found.
Communication is key.
It is. That's so important.
Yeah.
Okay. So question 14
Yeah.
dives into DNS.
Okay.
That's the domain name system. And why it's so crucial for just basic internet connectivity.
Right.
So they give this clear explanation of this really fundamental concept.
I like to think of DNS as the phone book of the internet.
Oh, okay.
You know, we type in a website name that's easy for us to remember, like Google.com.
Yeah.
But computers, they communicate using these numerical IP addresses.
Okay.
So DNS is the system that translates those human-friendly names into those computer-friendly numbers.
I get it.
Yeah.
So the example answer, it explains that DNS translates those domain names that we use into those IP addresses that computers need to find and connect to websites.
Right.
It's absolutely crucial for accessing websites. So you'd have to remember all these long strings of numbers.
Right.
Yeah,
and type them in every time you wanted to visit a web page.
That would be a nightmare.
It would be a nightmare.
So they also point out that a problem with DNS can be a common cause of network connectivity issues.
Absolutely.
So understanding it is key for troubleshooting.
It is. And, you know, DNS is one of those foundational technologies that really underpins the entire internet.
Right.
So a basic understanding of how it works is essential for anyone in IT.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So question 15 asks for a specific example of successfully resolving a software compatibility issue.
Okay.
And this really shows, you know, the resourcefulness of an IT professional.
Right.
And their ability to kind of problem solve when faced with limitations.
Absolutely. Sometimes you have different pieces of software that were never designed to work together.
Right.
So finding that way to make them work often requires some creative thinking.
So the example answer describes a situation where a company upgraded their operating system.
Okay.
But some of their older applications weren't compatible anymore.
Right.
But these applications were critical. So instead of just telling users they couldn't use them anymore, the IT support specialist came up with this solution.
Okay.
Using virtualization technology.
Okay.
Which allowed them to create this virtual environment where the old operating system could run alongside the new one.
Wow, that's clever.
Right. So users could keep using those essential older applications without disrupting their ability to use the new operating system.
That's great. It really shows the value of thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
Sometimes the simplest solution isn't possible.
Right.
So you need to be innovative to find workarounds.
Okay, so question 16.
Yeah.
Shifts our focus to the cloud.
Okay.
Asking about experience with cloud-based services like AWS.
Right.
Azure, GCP.
Yeah, the cloud is everywhere these days.
It is.
And knowing how to work with it is becoming really important for IT support.
Okay, so the example answer details experience with both AWS and Azure.
Okay.
So in AWS, they mentioned managing things like EC2 instances, which are virtual servers in the cloud, and S3 storage for storing data.
Right.
They also talked about configuring security groups and access controls to protect those resources.
Makes sense.
And in Azure, they described deploying web applications using app services and managing databases with Azure SQL database.
Okay.
They also talked about performance monitoring, security, and compliance within these cloud environments.
It really highlights how IT support has kind of moved beyond just the physical hardware in an office.
It's not just about what's in the server room anymore.
Exactly. The cloud is changing everything.
Okay. So question 17.
Yeah.
Deals with a constant security concern, handling suspicious emails.
Right.
The resource emphasizes the importance of security awareness and having protocols in place for when users report something that looks fishy.
Absolutely. Email is still one of the most common ways
Right.
that cyber attacks start,
Yeah.
whether it's through phishing or malware.
So IT support has a critical role to play here
They do.
in educating users and responding to these threats.
Right.
So the example answer, it outlines the steps an IT support specialist should take.
Okay.
When a user reports a suspicious email, first they tell the user not to click on any links or download any attachments.
Right.
Don't interact with it at all.
Yeah, just leave it alone.
Right? And then they should have the user forward the email to them for analysis. So then the IT team would examine the sender's address, the content, any links or attachments, looking for signs of malicious activity. And if it is a threat, they notify the security team, potentially block the sender, update the email filters to prevent similar emails from reaching other users.
It's a proactive approach to protecting the whole organization.
And then they should inform other users about this suspicious email. Expert speaker,